introductions and opening statements. And we'll have the first team go ahead and introduce themselves. And Sarah.
Hi, my name is, I don't think my mic is on.
Just hit the button.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Kayla Farhang. I'm a junior, and this is my running mate.
Hi, my name is Faryali, and I am a freshman student.
So our platform is really based on empowering students and making sure that students have power and that we are representative of student power. So one big thing that stuck out to us is inclusivity. So realizing the statement, part of the statement, one of the statements of HUSC is that every student is a member of HUSC. And I've never really felt that way at Hamline. So helping to realize that statement and make sure that all students are included because we are representative of the whole student body.
Also, we're committed to not only hearing students' voices, but making sure that their voices are reflected in our policies and platform.
I don't know, we really want to work to build better connections with the administration, build better connections with student organizations, and build better connections with students who just don't feel, students who are potentially overlooked. So younger students like freshmen, commuter students, students of color, students with disabilities. Yeah, we just want to make sure that everyone feels included regardless of their identity, their ability, or their background.
Thank you. All right. Logan and Alicia.
Hello, my name is Logan Mysick.
Hi, I'm Alicia Friend.
Alright, so I'm a sophomore here at Hamline University. I've been in HUSC for both years. I've enjoyed it greatly. It really gave me a chance to share my voice and help other students share their voice and get things done. And that's something that I didn't really get involved with in high school or anything like that. And I just kind of wanted to make a personal change to myself and make it so I could feel like I was doing something more. And HUSC gave me a great opportunity to do that. And throughout both years, I've remained very active in HUSC, and now it's culminated here, I guess, in me running for president with Alicia. Our platform basically revolves around 7 main tenets. Those tenets are diversity, dealing with the continuing conference and events management situation, long-term thinking, relationship with administration, relationships with the student body, and capital improvements, and that's a lot of very broad terms, but we also have plans to incorporate that all into our whole platform.
Adding on to that, I've been in HUSC for the past year. I definitely found my voice there through Logan. I think we've got a really good platform going. We're ready to jump into this head on. Off of those 7 points, I think the biggest things that we're hitting on in the descriptors is the collaboration fund. It went largely unused this year, so we want to up that and get students knowledgeable about the opportunities they have. The other thing is we really want to hit on the new students for next year because they are the class that's going to take over for us after this, and their involvement means a lot.
A lot of what we want to stand for is long-term thinking and the relationship with both students and administration. HUSC's in a pretty good position where we have a lot of connections with administration and students, so we have the input from the students that show up to our GAs, and that we can, get our input from them on various places on campus, and then we also have all the student orgs, and if we get the input of everybody and deal with administration, we can work together to get some things done.
Exactly, we're really excited, and here we are.
All right, hi, my name is Laura Perninger. I'm a junior representative right now, and the first question we would like to ask you is what makes you qualified to be the next HUSC President or Vice-President?
So although I haven't been involved with HUSC specifically, I've held a leadership position with MPIRG, so that's the Minnesota Public Interest Research Group, for the past year and a half. So I'm one of the Social Justice Task Force leaders, so not only do I lead events, I also plan campaigns and events. And I think that something that I've gained from that is the ability to hear student voices and to know what students want to see us do, and then kind of realizing those things and kind of conceptualizing them as either a campaign or an event.
I'm a freshman, and I feel like I am qualified to be vice president because of my fresh ideas, something I can put into Hamline and HUSC. I have no experience with HUSC, but I do have a lot of leadership skills. I've been working on outside campaigns and inside the school. I've been with groups like Emperor and HUSC and Pride, and I feel like I can put in a lot of my opinion and what I've been seeing as a student, as a freshman, and as a first-year student, changes that I feel is necessary for our school.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so I have, like I said earlier, been in, I feel like I'm cranking on this mic. I've been in HUSC for both years that I've attended Hamline. And, you know, I think I've missed, 2 GAs in my entire experience here, and I've loved HUSC every minute of the way. You know, that doesn't say a whole lot about my qualifications, though. That would come mainly from the work that I put into HUSC, obviously. And last year I was a member of the EAC committee as a Drew Hall representative, and I also participated in the public relations committee. I worked with a lot of stuff with capital improvements too, around like getting the new gym equipment and locker and stuff like that. And I've always tried to make as many connections as possible, and I think that really enables me to get things done.
So I have some previous experience in HUSC as well through this year, being a part of BER, the EAC Committee, Economic Affairs, also my work around campus, so with organizations. On top of that, I think our organization skills as a team qualify us in the running. We know the HUSC history, we know the background, we know the procedures, and overall I think our interest in wanting to better Hamline as a community and get those connections with administration really puts us on our top game.
Thank you. So now we're going to open it up to the floor for anybody who has questions regarding the topics we just spoke about. There will be 7 minutes available. Could you guys just ask any sorts of questions that you might have in response to their responses?
I'd like to ask about specific examples of particular projects that you've worked on that show your leadership capability.
If I can go first. So personally, not too long ago, we as an EAC committee, me and Lydia Hubert Peterson, she was my partner in this, but we just recently passed $10,400 to be put into the music department, and that was a huge success for us. I think that specifically motions towards us knowing the procedures and how to get the words spoken out. We listened and we did it.
Can you repeat the question, Paige? Sorry.
I'm looking for specific examples that show your leadership qualifications to be president.
Okay, yeah, I think a specific example was what I did recently with President Miller's office hours, and that's been very successful, where students can sign up and get a 15-minute time slot to meet with President Miller. And I think that really embodies what HUSC wants to do with like giving students a voice, because I mean, it's hard to think of anybody more important at Hamline than President Miller, and by giving students a voice through there, we're doing our mission.
Thank you. Do you have a response?
Yeah, I have a response. I feel like there's a lot of different events that are planned, but I'll focus on 2 specific examples. So one is on campus here, and that was organizing the adjunct food drive last semester. And so essentially that was through MPERG, and we partnered with the adjunct union to raise $800 worth of groceries to symbolize their $800 loss of buying power in the past 10 years. And the visibility that campaign created, we have been told by the adjunct union, really helped to solidify their deal with the administration, because it got students on board and it got students to understand essentially the hit to the income that adjuncts were experiencing. And then more broadly, I'm on the board of directors of MPERG's statewide organization.
So it is time, unfortunately, so thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions? So we're right there.
Yep, this is for both teams, so you both kind of have similar platforms, but I feel like every year people talk about how they want to strengthen connections with students and administration, and it's really broad and it's a lot easier to say than do. So I was just wondering if you guys have any specific examples how you can get students more involved and also better relationships with administration if that is something you see is an issue right now.
If your team wants to go first.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, the way that we can strengthen our connection with the student body and administration is, first of all, have non-HUSC charted groups come in and represent themselves in meetings, and also have a financial board with.
We want to have like students involved on the administrative financial board because we feel that because that's our tuition, we should have students have a say in where that money goes. And a lot of the big decisions that the administration makes are based on money issues, where money is going to go. So we'd really like to have not necessarily like a HUSC representative on that board, but just student representatives on the financial board who are representing a student voice in how the administration specifically spends money.
Sorry, that is time, so next.
So I think a current issue that a lot of students are familiar with was the conference and event management switch-ups. So a good example of that was the training that was needed. HUSC fostered conversation between students and administration that we would further. Tabling was a good example. So for a while, training was needed for tabling, and the students were very upset about that. As HUSC as an organization, we listened. We fostered conversation, brought it to administration, and as of current, it is changed. So you do need to still go in and meet with somebody to schedule a time, but you don't need further training on that.
I think facilitation is a big deal too with when you're dealing with administration, because they're ultimately the supreme being. They're the ones that are going to be setting policy, and what they're looking for a lot of the time from us is student input, and that student input has value.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
As leaders, what is your biggest weakness?
You want to offer this to Logan first?
I talk too much. That's probably one. Yeah, I think my biggest weakness that I need to work on is basically adhering to agendas and stuff like that, and that's something I really want to do for especially my executive board meetings, is get a schedule and like chunk out times of like what I want to talk about for how long and stuff, because I can talk. I mean, I can go. So I need to work on that.
Personally, I'm a people pleaser, so I'm not great at confrontation. But I've got Logan here. We are a good team, and he's got my back on that. So I'm here to listen, and if things get a little hasty, I'm sure Logan's got my back.
I can be confrontational.
There you go.
Yep. I would say my weakness as a person, usually I say a lot of things, and sometimes I want to take action. Like whenever I see an issue, I complain about it, but I want to take action on those things. So making sure that I do as I say, not like complain about it all the time. So
I guess my biggest weakness is like overloading myself, like doing too many things at once. But I think that if this is a position that I get, that it's something that would be at the forefront just because I'm representing so many people and so many people will be relying on me. So.
I am Catherine, and I'm the Manor Home Representative to HUSC. And the next question for our candidates is, how do you hope to engage all Hamline students in HUSC?
All right, so the big points that we're looking at here that's on our platform for this question is the collaboration fund. That's something that's new to HUSC. It's not as accessible to the student population right now as in terms of like them knowing about it. So that's something that we would want to get involved with. And then another big point is first year students. So we definitely believe that hitting hard with the incoming class and having their involvement is really going to shape HUSC for the future.
I think maybe not more so on a policy level, but on like a personal level. I can use my talking too much for good use here, and I really admire like street politics where you kind of get down on the level of the students and just talk to them individually and see what individual students want and get as many student inputs as you can from that, because a lot of times students won't show up to events where they can put their voice out there. So if you take it to them, that can be really valuable and get that out there.
we hope to get all the students engaged by making office hours more known, HUSC office hours more known to the student body, and also reaching out to students on social media, since social media is a daily part of everybody's daily lives. on Twitter, maybe Facebook.
Yeah, in addition to that, I didn't know about HUSC office hours literally until last week when I turned in my paperwork to Sarah, and I was like, oh, they have office hours. So definitely making office hours more well-known and more accessible. And then also hosting town halls, like very informal town halls. I know class reps do that, but I guess just being, like Logan said, more accessible on like a personal level, and just really making an effort to hear from students what they want to see on campus.
Okay, so we have audience questions. Casey.
How do you guys plan on like upping the attendance at like HUSC events or even like the town halls you brought up? Like how do you, what's your plan for like getting students in the door? Because that's like the hardest part, I feel like.
Like we said, social media, because a lot of people are on social media, making it more known online too, and publicizing a lot of the meetings. And I didn't really know that there was a HUSC meetings too, like once every week. Making sure that students who aren't really on campus or new to the campus, like freshmen or commuters, are known to the hours, and making sure that they're attending the meetings and events by HUSC.
Yeah, I think also specifically reaching out to like people we recognize as student leaders, not necessarily even official like leaders of student orgs, but just people who are like student leaders, because then they can kind of disseminate the word as well.
I can speak from experience that from PRC, Public Relations Committee, that they work very hard to try and get the word out there. And while there's always room for improvement in that and social media presence and keeping current with that stuff, I think that it's a bigger issue than that with getting people to town halls. I think town halls kind of need to be reformatted into something that targets students more versus targets people that are more into HUSC or like are searching it out more. It needs to target people that aren't going to be so likely to look on Facebook and check HUSC's page or whatever. Something more like tabling or something like that that gets more in the student's face is kind of what we're going for.
So like Logan
Okay,
said,
that's time. Any other audience questions?
I got one. So GA is kind of like the kind of one of the main things, of HUSC, it's where every student, is welcome to and every student can voice an opinion. It was nice seeing when Jason Verdugo came in and had required all the ethics, like it was completely filled, which was really nice. So I guess what are some ideas to kind of fill, I guess GA? That's kind of it.
I think things like 2 years or last year they had things like special topics GAs and org spotlight GAs, and those GAs were relatively filled. I mean, obviously it's not the ideal amount of people, but stuff like that helped a lot. I mean, if we go one step further with that and feature more things or different things on campus, that could help fill it up a little bit more in there.
I also think organization leaders, like presidents of organizations, if we hit them really hard with asking them to come, asking their committees to come and being involved, they could definitely hear and make their voice known through campus, through their organizations. Also, another platform point we had was new students. And I know we've hit on it a lot, but I think they're definitely going to be able to make a difference if we can reach out to them way more.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'd go one step further with the student orgs to making appearances at student org meetings and letting them know that they should come that they're welcome at HUSC. Not only their representative, but also their whole organization.
Also connecting with the non-HUSC funded groups and having representatives from their groups come into HUSC meetings and GA meetings and having their voice be put out there and being heard by us.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
At the beginning of this year, I'm a first-year student. At the beginning of this year, I found GA to be very intimidating just because I didn't understand the format of what was going on. And now I'm on HUSC and I enjoy it a lot. But what are you going to do to get people who are the first time coming into GA and to be a little less intimidated for them?
Kayla, if your team wants to answer.
Well, something that I mentioned was like doing like informal town halls in addition to GA. So I think that maybe inviting people to that as a like first step to just kind of like get to know who's standing up there and talking, and get to know the president and vice president like as human beings would help to make that a lot less intimidating.
Yeah, kind of like what Kayla said, having those town hall meetings. Did you guys hear me? Town hall meetings and making sure that freshmen and commuters and students who are usually overlooked come and actually feel comfortable speaking there and talking about how they feel on campus and stuff.
So I think we definitely want to hit upon the point of collaboration. So as a group, we want to really work in collaboration with the first year programs, so we can reach out to those students in your initial summer programs and in those first few days where you were here at Hamline. I think it would have really been beneficial if the president and vice president were required to be there on the field with you guys, learning your names, shaking your hands, being there, letting you know, and I think that would make you feel a lot more comfortable to show up and say, hey, Alicia, like, what's going on? We would know each other on a one-on-one level, and I think that's important.
I think if the input is from, like incoming first years like yourself, that GA is intimidating, then, I mean, it sounds kind of campy, but like, maybe it could be more casual too.
Question 3. Hamline's mission is to create a diverse and collaborative community of learners dedicated to the development of students' knowledge, values, and skills for successful lives of leadership, scholarship, and service. How is this reflected in your platform and goals for HUSC?
What we said is we want to create a more diverse group by having freshmen, commuter students, students of color, students with disabilities are represented in HUSC meetings and general assemblies. By making sure that every student is represented and heard and that their voices are represented in our platforms and policies, and making sure that they don't feel left out in the process. Being a freshman student and a commuter, I sometimes feel very left out in GA meetings.
Yeah, to add to that, one thing specifically that I've kind of taken issue with HUSC is the GPA requirement for specific positions, because I feel that marginalizes students based on ability. So being able to either do away with that or put an appeals process in place would be, I think, would help to expand the inclusivity of HUSC and specifically in HUSC leadership.
All right, so a real key word when you're discussing diversity, I think, is perspective. And we have a lot of orgs on campus here, the Multicultural Alliance and stuff like that, that have a whole lot of perspective to give on diversity issues. And I think this year they were a little bit underrepresented in GAs and stuff like that. So something I really would like to work on is to, get them more represented in our GAs. And like things like the MA rep and stuff, really get them involved in HUSC going-ons. And also this has a lot to do with long-term thinking, I think. Continuing like programs like the Diversity Summit and making sure that gets off, and gets done maybe early, maybe more often. Different programs like that can do a lot of good, I think.
I think Logan hit it right on the head.
And now we're going to open up to any questions within the audience.
So one thing I experienced for the first time this year is I had 2 returners to college. They're both parents, so I got to experience having a very different perspective on life in the classroom with me, and I haven't been a representative, did not see that in HUSC. And so for me, I thought, how do we bring those people who are coming back to college and choosing Hamline as their place into HUSC, because they are part of our student body and they are part of our voice.
Yep.
That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, non-traditional students are really hard to get to participate in HUSC because at our age it's real easy to think of HUSC or like Hamline as the most important thing, but those people are going to have bigger fish to fry, I guess. So what we kind of have to do to appeal to them, I think, is first off advertise the rep position for non-traditional students, and then maybe working with more commuters, getting the commuter space that was talked about last year, you know, more off the ground and stuff like that. And I mean, things that just appeal to them more with their, you know, there's going to have a lack of interest in Hamline compared to our age group, I think. So just dealing with that.
Thank you. Kayla?
Yeah, I think one of the major components of that is just accessibility. So making sure that one thing that I think is really important is office hours and just being reachable via email and other platforms if they can't be there during the day, like during GA. I also think that like actually reaching out to those people on an individual basis and getting to know them and building a relationship with them on like a one-to-one basis in order to kind of draw them into the whole process is a really good strategy as well.
Thank you. Are there more questions? Gracie?
How do you intend to get a diverse number of students to apply to your executive boards? Diverse range of students, I should say.
Kayla, two more students first.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yeah. How do you intend to obtain a diverse range of students to apply to your executive board?
Well, I think one big thing is like we are both people of color, and so representation is really big in that, and seeing people who look like you in leadership positions is a really big first step.
Also making sure that leaders of multi-alliance groups are represented during GA, like having the president of Pride and CASA and just those students come in and talk about their issues that they're facing on campus and voice their opinions.
Thank you. Logan?
Yeah, I think as far as getting, you know, more diversity in the executive board, appealing to orgs is a big thing. You know, it's kind of a often repeated point of mine, but that's a good resource is organizations, and if we advertise those positions to people in those organizations, they're going to feel like they can, you know, join up with HUSC and they can use it to make a difference. And I think that is something that will sway them to applying for the positions.
I think also just reaching out on a personal level to the people you know, to the people they know, just getting down on the ground and doing anything.
Thanks. More questions?
You're all talking about how you really want to get to know students on a one-to-one basis, but it's clearly impossible to get to know every single student individually. What do you plan to do to get your name out there so that people who want to talk to you get to talk to you?
So I think a good thing that we've hit on is getting out to the first year programs, being out there. Personally, I would love to be a part of your orientation, and I would love to be out there playing Frisbee with you guys, learning your names. Also another thing, organizations. We both talked about, as running people, going to organizational meetings and being a part of those.
Yeah, I think we had all already mentioned going to student org meetings, also going to other student org events, being visible, like literally visible on campus, just walking around. I'm a commuter student, Farhia is a commuter student, so we're both literally here from bright and early in the morning until like 10 o'clock at night, usually just sitting in Anderson Center. So I think that also will help.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Both of you talked about emphasizing the role of reps, like in terms of a diverse rep or MA rep. How do you, as a leader, intend to support and encourage them to reach out to, I guess you could say, the constituents and who they represent?
I feel like they're not going to reach out if you don't reach out first. You can't really expect groups to reach out to you when you're not making an effort to reach out to them. So I feel like if we make an effort to reach out to them, they're going to reach out back. We feel like we have to make that first step in reaching out to MA groups and making sure that they feel like they are heard and represented on campus.
Yeah, I don't think that it should necessarily be like us telling these reps to then reach out to the people of color or whatever. I think it needs to be on us, and it really needs to be a collaborative effort to reach out to those constituents.
Thank you. Logan?
Could you
repeat the question again, Kiana?
Well,
Sorry.
I guess it was misinterpreted. Well, we have these reps already
Yes.
in HUSC, so how as a leader are you going to encourage them to support? Because I mean, like I represent SAC, and how are you going to encourage me to relate SAC and to HUSC together? Like how are you going as a leader, if that makes sense?
I feel like this has a lot to do with like the broader problem of a certain like disconnect we have between representatives and the executive board. And I mean, it's not, you know, that's not necessarily going to solve the issue if we like make a better relationship, but the better relationship we do have, you know, the more we can help out. And the executive board should be qualified to help out more. So it gives a resource to, you know, the MA, the SOC rep, whatever, SAC rep, whatever, to, you know, like get stuff done. You know, it's a big tenet of what I'm looking for here is to get stuff done. And if you have, you know, friends in the executive board, a bunch of friends, a whole lot of bonding stuff going on, you're going to have a whole lot easier time to do it.
Thank you. We have time for one more question referring to this question. Yeah.
One of the pillars of the Hamlin is service. What have you done in the past that qualifies service, and what would you do on HUSC?
Service particularly, so I guess I've been involved with HUSC this past year, and that's kind of taken over my life a little bit, so I haven't been able to as much. But I was definitely involved with Colleges Against Cancer my first year, and I think that really made a big difference in my life, and I've definitely shared that knowledge that I've gained there, and I've definitely encouraged people to join. So I think the service of just spreading the word is also very powerful.
Yeah, Relay for Life is also another big thing for me. I participated in Relay for Life last year and raised a good bit of money. I was proud of myself for that, I guess. Also, HUSC, like last year, we did, it was a canned food drive, and I thought that was really good. And although I didn't participate as much as I, you know, would have liked to, I did participate in it. And I think in the future, which isn't really addressing your question so much, but I think more things like that could do good.
Thank you.
So I guess I've been very involved in MPERG recently, but outside of that, I did do the hand-in-hand partnership, so mentoring children, and I have a really big passion for working with children, so that was a service aspect of service I did. I also did service in like the greater community with Free Arts Minnesota, so mentoring children through art therapy who had been affected by domestic violence. And I guess a way to get like HUSC, specifically the exec board more involved would be doing like HUSC exec board like day of service activities, so like going to a food shelf and helping at a food shelf, going to bridging and helping at bridging, just as both a team builder and also an aspect of service.
Thank you.
So question number 4, how do you plan to improve communication and coordination between HUSC and student organizations? And Logan is the first one to answer this.
All right, so I think some big points we want to hit on for this one is encouraging the executive board members to attend the org meetings like we discussed previously. The collaboration fund that we've talked about briefly, that's also a big thing that we want to work on if we are elected. And then a big thing is making the minutes known of the GAs. So I know that's been a complication with a little bit of transparency, and I guess we just want to get those minutes out there. So working with administration and maybe getting emails sent out, getting a spot on the front page, maybe doing big stuff, hearing what administration says, what you guys say, and work on that from there.
Yeah, and really just getting the word about the Economic Affairs Committee out there too, because we have our resources available to us. We have, you know, a lot of money that we can use to help students do what they want and to further their communities. And the more word out we can get about that to different orgs, the better, because they can use it.
I feel like we touched on some of the things that, like connecting with non-HUSC funded representatives here because they aren't part of Hamline, having more appearance in student org meetings, making sure that, hey, we are president, vice president, we're here for you and to kind of be here for you and understand your opinions and see where you stand on a lot of issues, and build a relationship with students and administration.
I think to add to that, something that me and Farhia discussed was having at least like every semester just a meeting specifically with like student orgs. So not necessarily the reps who are at GA, but just like meeting with whoever from that student org wants to meet. And yeah, I think reiterating the inclusion of non-HUSC funded orgs and knowing what they're doing. I'm a part of a non-HUSC funded org, so I think that we have not had a big connection with HUSC. I mean, we've reached out to HUSC, and HUSC has been really helpful to us, but I think working with other non-HUSC funded organizations would be really important.
Thank you. So now we're going to open the floor to anybody else's questions regarding this question or their answers. Yeah.
So, HUSC actually holds a monthly meeting every month. It's like an all-organization meeting, so everybody's welcome to come to that, and basically it's like an outlet for orgs to like talk to HUSC representatives about like what's been going on, what do they need help with. CM was a big thing, but I know it's like, for me, I'm the SOC chair, so it's been really hard to like get the word out and connect with org. We've had some like contact information because things are constantly changing within orgs, and it's hard to get that information back. So I guess, how do you guys plan on like helping these orgs get there? Like, I don't know, because I've definitely struggled with that, so I don't know if you have like a different idea of what would be more helpful to get the word out and get people to actually attend these meetings.
Yeah, so the fact that I didn't know that that's even a thing, and I'm a leader on in a student organization speaks volumes. And I think that a way to, I mean, I've also had a lot of issues reaching out to other organizations and having updated contact information. So I think working with like the Hamline website to make sure that, like working on that website to make sure that there's updated information of students in leadership positions in different organizations would be really great. I actually just compiled my own contact list for this year for my organization to use, just because it was getting really frustrating. So I think that there are ways to be able to do that, and a lot of that came through just like reaching out to people on Facebook who I know were in that organization. And I was like, hey, who is the leader of your organization? So I think just making the effort to like figure it out would be.
Time. Sorry. Logan?
I want to make it a very strict requirement to have very clear contact info for the SOC chair, the treasurer, and EAC, and anybody who has to deal with orgs frequently, because there's a lot of complications with that. You know, earlier on in the year and stuff, and it just kind of becomes a mess. So having like a strict requirement, or like, you know, there will be penalties, that could do a lot to helping everything go smoother and being able to focus on other areas than just like trying to contact people. And you know, maybe it would be a good idea for it to apply to non-HUSC chartered orgs as well, although there's really not a whole lot we can do to like punish them, I guess.
Thank you. Any other questions?
What would you do to help to start new orgs starting out? I don't know if that makes sense, but like I'm part of a new organization on campus, and just kind of like, what can you do for us? That's kind of a weird question.
So Logan, this is yours first.
Support one.
Yeah, I mean, new orgs are going to have a whole lot of new issues to deal with, and like they're going to have, you know, little baby orgs gotta sprout somewhere, you know. So I think being just a general resource for stuff like that is like a really good concept. I mean, I know it's really broad, sorry, but if you have like any questions, like when starting your new org, the SOC chair can be a valuable resource for that, because they're going to know who to talk to, because that's what they deal with. And then also just, you know, encouraging them to be involved in like looking at what EAC does with allocating funds and what the SOC chair does on a daily basis.
So our next question, what issues do you see on campus and how do you plan to solve them? I think this one goes to Logan first. Oh, Kayla, sorry.
So we kind of hear it. One of the big things that was kind of touched on by the other candidates was the space management. So that's really inaccessible for student organizations. So reinstating student use of 25 Live would be how to solve that. Sorry, I'm kind of trying to talk fast just because there's a time limit. We also want to talk about the unused spaces, so the law school, the Soren dining hall, and the green spaces. So the Soren dining hall has been empty for a really long time. We want to turn that into a food shelf, a community accessible food shelf. and then using the law school to have either org spaces or adjunct offices. We also see the sexual assault policy as a problem on this campus, so starting to work towards an affirmative consent policy like they have at the University of Minnesota. And then we also talked about having students involved on the financial board decisions, just because that is our tuition money, and we feel that students should be involved, at least on some level, in making those decisions.
Also, another issue that we talked about is earmark, making sure that students are accessible to halal, kosher, vegan, vegetarian-friendly meals. Also, as commuter students, we identify with the struggles of being a commuter student, so talking about
Okay, that's
part-
fine.
Okay, so the big issues we see currently, working with administration and, like you said, the conference and events management. So that's been a big problem, but HUSC as an organization has facilitated conversation and we've seen results. We want to continue to see results with that. Logan, did you want to talk about?
Yeah. You know, 25 Live, or I guess the greater conference and events management issue as a whole, you know, I think HUSC this year has done actually a very good job in dealing with that. We've been told that from the administration who holds supremacy over us that 25 Live simply will not go back to students registering for themselves. They had too much issues, and that's just how it is. And so our goal as HUSC is kind of to make what is possible happen, and then to make, you know, the impossible things a little bit more possible and kind of reach a compromise with administration. And that's the only way we're going to get things done. You know, for the CEM issue, we had Tracy and Lacey come in and talk to us, and they got some very valuable student input that, you know, helped to implement better policies with that.
On top of that, we also had the adjunct sides come into both of that, so GA just holds a lot of power, and I guess we clearly need to get that message out there a little bit more.
Facilitate as many discussions as possible.
There you go. Thank you. Any audience questions?
I guess a lot of the issues you guys are talking about are largely they're very much put within the administration, and there's not a lot of student access, like the financial situations, the sexual assault policies, conference and event management. So I guess my question is, how do you plan on starting that conversation with the administration and asking for student accessibility and things that have been seen as very opaque to our interests?
Okay. I feel like part of that is all of us as a student body realizing that this, like, university is like our university. So empowering students to understand that, like, this is our campus, this is like our place to be, and I think if we realize that, we'll help the administration to realize that. And I know that sounds like very idealistic, but I think sitting down and getting in the meetings and getting the administration to realize that, like, this is our home in some sense, at least for us as commuters, like, this is like literally our home. And so making it reflective of like what we want, and sitting down with them in meetings and being able to speak to them as equals rather than like the difference between like, oh, this administration, who's this supreme being.
Something that HUSC is really good at doing is starting conversations. Having administrators and some big name administrators come in and talk at GAs is really helpful. And as far as like sexual assault issues, if we had, you know, Patty Klein in, for instance, and then we partnered with SPSV and, you know, stuff like that, we can get conversations started, and people will attend those. Those are interesting. People like hearing about that, and people like doing something towards that. So something like that is a good way to deal with those deeply rooted administration issues, along with things like having the adjuncts in and stuff like that. That's kind of how you have to tackle them.
And I think also acknowledging that, like, administration is a tool, they're here for us, but they're also people too. So Patty Klein at this moment, she has the job of 3 people, and she has a small budget.
Sorry. Okay, other audience questions? Lacey?
Yeah, so one difficult thing for me this year was understanding that as Vice President and President, you have to represent the represent the administration policies that are in place. You know, you can't just be completely against them in that sense, because you are, you know, part of administration in that sense. So it's like, how do you approach those sensitive things that you personally, you know, can't like upheld, but then, you know, in your position you know, have to kind of like hold those, you know, or work with those, I should say, work with them.
Yeah, I think that's something to do with, you know, just honesty and a desire for compromise. I mean, I'm sure once in a while Wendy sits in on meetings and disagrees with something, and I'm sure she speaks her mind about it. And you can do that in a very constructive way. So, you know, obviously everybody in HUSC isn't going to have the same opinion either. So the different people get their chance to speak up in GA when we have guests that are administrators, and, you know, we can kind of go from there.
I think just as a team, we're ready to tackle these big issues. We're ready to be there to listen and do what you want us to do, because that's what HUSC is, a voice.
Thank you. Also going back with admin, making sure there's transparency with decisions made for Hamline students, and also facing and, you know, confronting issues on our campus. Sexual assault is an issue faced on every campus, and I feel like we should address it here too, making sure we have an affirmative yes policy for
Yeah, I think a large part of this is giving a forum for discussion. So like us as president and vice president don't want to just like co-opt it and like put our opinions on it, and like, so just giving that open space for students to say like, this is a policy that I don't agree with, and having an open space for them to have that conversation with the administration and being kind of a mediator.
Okay, we have time for one more question in the back.
Do you feel that right now GA is not an open space for people to have conversations? And have you been to GAs to know whether or not those are currently taking place?
Being a first year student, I have heard little of GA, unfortunately. The thing is, I did hear about it lately, and I feel as though it would be a little scary for me to go in there and go like, hey, I have this and this to say about it. So it's more making it more comfortable, more casual with freshmen and students who are not really aware of GA meetings on campus, and other students too.
I have been to GA meetings, not this year, because I take ACTC classes at St. Thomas, and they've conflicted during combo hour since they don't have combo hour there. So I think, like, because of that, it's just really not been accessible to me, and
Okay,
Hi. Yeah, we've been at GA. It's definitely an open space. It's formal. That's what's efficient. But I think it's also an attendance thing. So I think a lot of people know about it. Clearly, we need to get the word out there more. That's something we would be willing to work on, taking ideas. But it definitely is an open space. It's just, I think, getting the word out there. And I think a big part of that is in our platform, first-year students, orientation programs, getting out there, getting the word out there. So the classes that build up will have that knowledge.
Yeah, and I mean also there's room for more casual encounter or discussion in GA without seeming too rigid. I mean, you know, I like jokes. Maybe we need to make GA feel a little bit more casual, and if that's what gets, yeah.
This is the final official question. If you were to become the next HUSC President and Vice-President, how do you plan to keep yourself accountable to the action plans and platforms that you talked about tonight? So, Logan's team answers first.
All right. So I guess if I win the election, I hope to hold myself accountable and be honest. I mean, I've probably only told like 3 lies in my life, and I didn't just make it 4. So, I want to hold to our campaign promises as best as we can, and actually go out and do it. Which everybody says that, but that's what I'd like to do. And then if I don't win the election, I mean, I've been involved here for going on 2 years, and I'm going to continue to be involved. And you'll see me in student leadership roles in the future.
Yeah. Wow. That was really good. I think really we as well are commuter students, but we're fairly close to campus. I would love to be here during the summer months. I would love to be here during the beginning when it's not mandatory for us to be. I think just being involved, whether we make it or not, is a big deal.
Thank you.
I feel like surveys would be a huge thing for students to tell us how we're doing as vice president and president, making sure that their names are not visible and their information is not disclosed with us. So it would be more of an honest opinion of how HUSC is doing and how HUSC vice president and president is doing.
In addition to that, like having space, maybe not at every GA, but at some GA to like just have a space for like, okay, what are you guys concerned about? Just getting feedback in that sense. And I guess also one big thing would be checking in with each other, because we came up with this platform together, and in order to implement it, we're going to have to continue to check in with each other and meet with each other and have discussions with each other on how we're going to do that. And I think I agree with the other two candidates that regardless of whether or not we win, we both view ourselves as leaders, and these are things we're passionate about, so they're going to get done anyways.
Thank you. We're going to open up to the floor for any follow-up questions.
So a lot of you talk about meeting with administration, like the administration, whatever that necessarily could mean. How have you worked with the administration in the past, and how do you view yourself working with the administration to get our issues solved in the future?
So Logan.
Well, I've worked with the administration in the past, a lot of times through the President Miller's office hours. That's kind of my main experience with dealing with, like, the buzzword administration, blanket term, whatever. But I've also met with facilities, campus rec on different issues and things, possible capital improvements we want to make. Things like that, you kind of have to go through administration to get their input and see how they want to implement it. Because we have funding as a resource, but administration, once again the blanket term, is going to be able to help us use that funding to the best extent that we can.
And I think a big part of that this year in HUSC, we implemented bringing administration into GAs and having their input there. I would love to continue that and build onto it and have be more knowledgeable about their entrance into GA.
So MPERG has a lot of meetings with Dean Sigbert just to update him on what we're doing, our campaigns, our programs, and just having casual conversations with him about our development as an organization. So I've had experience in that, having conversations with him specifically. I've also had informal conversations with President Miller. So I guess she knows who I am. I haven't had any formal administrative meetings with her at all, but yeah, and then also dealing with space management just because I am a leader in a leadership position on org, so I have experience working with Tracy as well.
Also, like I said, I was a freshman. I am a freshman. Really, with past experience here, especially being a commuter and taking public transportation regarding safety, I've been in contact with administration.
Thank you. Right. Any more questions? Casey?
So this was kind of brought up. There's a time in GA set aside for questions, concerns, rumors going on campus, just open up conversations with students on campus and what's going on with them. And most of the time you can hear crickets in the room. It's a little dead. So I mean, how do you want to work to enhance not only attendance but participation at GA? Because I know a lot of times people just don't bring anything. I don't know.
Okay. I think one part of that is getting to know students on an individual level. So just being more accessible on campus to be able to build those relationships, so then when people come to GA, they feel comfortable saying what they want to say to me or to Farhia or to whoever's on the exec board. So just being more visible as on a human, personal level, I think would really help to make people feel more comfortable and feel like it's a safe space to share.
Also, I would like to add on saying that students with GA meetings probably start off with some questions, making sure that everyone participates with questions, how's your day? Is there any changes you want to see on campus? More direct, specific questions towards students, so they can get more involved. Logan?
Yeah, I think special topic GAs really go a long way to making people participate, because once you get like a conversation going, it's easier to like keep it going versus if you just didn't have any conversation to start with at all. So really making strong, important pre-planned questions to ask like during the more like guided discussion portions of GA, I think would help to get more participation and more people riled up and talking.
I think fostering relationships is really important as well. So between the executive board and representatives who are required to be there, it would be really awesome to have that connection between them, and then also having HUSC as a group be connected to the other organizations. So I think it's just a thing of reaching out and really being there and like having our name out there so people can reach out to us.
More questions?
I was in the restroom for the direct response to this question, so I'm sorry if this is redundant, but I was wondering what all of your guys' 2016 and 2017 school years look like. Specifically, like, how will you make sure that you both have enough time to take the job seriously and enough time to remain visible on campus and continue with the other areas you might be interested in?
Well, Corey, I think the biggest thing with that is that HUSC is kind of my main thing. HUSC is what I do. Like that's my main involvement on campus. So as far as having time, I should have time for that because that's what I choose to dedicate my time to. I love Hamline, I love HUSC, and I'm willing to dedicate a lot of time to it. And I mean, I've done that for the past 2 years as well, for the past year and a half technically.
Yeah, so building off of that for this past year, I've already built the time into my schedule for HUSC, and I've been able to work with it really well. My schedule, class-wise, work-wise, will be very similar, and working on campus also makes it really flexible, so I can stay involved as much as I need to be.
Thank you.
Well, to be honest with you, I'm unemployed, so I won't have a job to worry about. And then next year is my senior year, so a lot of the, at least my spring semester, I'm not taking like a full course load, and then my fall semester, one of my courses is an internship, so class-wise, I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue either. With balancing MPERG, I think that's what's going to be the biggest issue, but I'm not looking to expand on my leadership role at MPERG. I'm probably just going to stay in the same position that I'm in, which is not like we have 2 co-chairs, which are like the presidents, so I'm not trying to move up on the ladder at all there, so I'm not going to be taking on any more with MPERG, so I think that my focus would be HUSC.
Also, I feel like me and Kayla are very committed to not only hearing, because there's a difference between hearing students' voices and actually listening to them. So I feel like their voices will be reflected in our policies and platforms and things that we.
One more question?
So a really important part of HUSC is the relationship between the president and the vice president, and I'm sure Eric and Racy can attest to that. So I'm wondering what your experience is working with this other person that you're running with, and if you kind of know each other's communication styles well, and how you'll use that moving forward.
Kayla, I actually just met Farhia this year, so I'm not going to lie and say we're best friends. I've recognized her leadership, and I recognized her leadership skills and the way that she leads, and I feel like that's very complementary to the way that I lead. Yeah.
I just met Kayla, and I kind of see Kayla as an older sister, so someone who I can see as a mentor, and I feel like we communicate very well. Yeah, and I think she'll make a great president.
Thank you. Logan?
I mean, I don't know, we're like straight up buds. No, we're real good friends, so like communication's definitely no issue, Colleen. I could message her funny pictures on Facebook just fine, but from a business standpoint, from getting things done, we kind of like butt heads in a very constructive way, I'd say. I mean, even just like drafting our campaign, we definitely had like points of contention where we were kind of frustrated with each other, but I mean, we got it down and we nailed something where we agree on everything, and get a little.
I think we definitely know each other. We've been friends since first year. So even though our styles aren't similar, I think they're complementary and they work, and we can achieve a lot, and we already have.
We are going to move on to closing statements. Each candidate team will get 2 minutes to kind of wrap up what they've said so far and add anything that they haven't talked about. And Logan's team is going to be going first.
Alright, so basically what mine and Alicia's, our reasons for joining HUSC as a whole revolve a lot about our love for Hamline and our love for the student body. And we want to see Hamline and Hamline's students exceed as well as they can on a long-term basis. And this is the opportunity to be president and vice president is a good way for us to make the change we want to see happen and to make the change that all the students want to see happen. And so we're kind of trying to, do that and just draw from our deeply seated love of Hamline University.
So I know like people love to complain, and that's totally great. That's an awesome way to do things. But I've always loved Hamline, so even though there's complaints and stuff, I've always seen the good in it, and I just want to keep furthering that love for Hamline. I chose it, and I'm here. I'm still going to be here. And I think Logan and I together as a team, we're extroverts, and we'll be able to step out to the Hamline campus and really get things done.
We want to fix the bad and make the good better.
Yeah, so a big part of our platform is empowering students and making sure that HUSC is inclusive. So we aren't people that have been involved with HUSC, but we're still both leaders on campus, and so we want to open up HUSC to people who are leaders and who are strong and ambitious. So that GA really has the input of every student voice, and so that HUSC really is representative, like every student really is a member of HUSC. And I think a big part of that is getting visibility in student orgs, and also just connecting better on an individual level with students. I'll let Farhia take it home.
Alright, and also, like Kayla said, making sure that every student is being heard on campus and their voices, especially connecting with students who are usually overlooked, like the non-traditional students, commuter students, students of color, students with disabilities. I also feel like people who do complain is a good thing, because Hamline is a great school, but there are problems and we need to address those problems, and that's the only way we can make Hamline a better place for everyone. And also to talk about something that I was discussing, like with food options and making sure that things are accessible to our diets, like halal, kosher, vegan, vegetarian food, and making sure that every student feels like they have something to eat without making that tough choice, like is this cheese pizza okay for me to eat, or is this halal, is this chicken halal, like those kind of questions, making sure that it's where the students' health and dietary restrictions are considered when eating lunch and having dinner.
Thank you.
There will probably be a learning curve going into the new position. So how do you expect to get over that quickly so you can actually get things done? Or what challenges do you see happening as you try to get over that learning curve?
Not to toot my own horn, but I feel like I'm a quick learner on a lot of things. I'm very fast. I'm a fast learner when it comes to not memorizing, but learning new things. Like I've learned a few languages, and I've learned English within 3 months, so I think that's pretty impressive. I learned a lot of things really quickly, so.
I think part of it is just like prepping. I mean, you can only prep like by reading the bylaws and reading the Constitution so much, but I think doing that like over the summer and before like this is like during the academic year is really important. But I think a lot of it is just like putting yourself in the position and having to learn in the moment. So I think that there's a level of like prep, but it's just gonna have to like happen as it happens, and happen as it goes. So.
I think together as a team we have pretty good experience. Logan a little more than I, so he'll be definitely a guiding light. But also our current president and vice president, Eric and Racy, they're really awesome people. We're pretty close with them, and for the transition period, I know they'll be here to help us out, to let us know everything we need to.
Yeah.
You know, being on the exec board now and having been on HUSC as a rep last year, I've made a lot of connections to the people who have been on HUSC and who have already experienced, you know, the potential job situation or whatever. And, you know, I think a lot of the difficulty in transitioning is a very loosey-goosey transition retreat is what we have or had last year. And I think if we really make more time for this year's executive board to educate next year's executive board, that would help to make the learning curve less steep. So if, you know, we get Eric to impart more of his knowledge on me, and, you know, Racy to give Alicia the gift of knowledge, and then we have, you know, especially with jobs like treasurer or something like that, to really work with the future exec board members.
Thank you. Any more questions?
I know Kayla talked about being an ACTC student. I don't know if you guys are, but a big thing that happened was the bus being gone, and that has really discouraged students from taking other ACTC classes, and I was wondering if that was an issue that you guys were concerned with.
Logan, if you want to answer first.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely an issue that I was concerned with, and you know, I remember this being talked about last year a little bit, and students being upset with the ACTC bus being shut down, and I personally have refrained from taking ACTC courses in large part due to the lack of the bus there. So something like that is definitely, I would hold a personal investment into, and I would look into, you know, who could we get to speak at GAs or the things we talked about earlier in order to, you know, further the conversation on the issue.
I also work in student administrative services at the front desk, and it's been a huge concern, but the students who do take it currently have voiced their opinions, and I think we could definitely work on some of that stuff. So if anyone has a suggestion. Other than that though, we haven't seen actually a steep decline in ACTC participation, so we're kind of just open and ready to listen to you guys and what you have to say.
Do you also want us to answer that? Yeah, so I'm doing a French minor, so I literally cannot do that at this school. So I've been taking French classes at St. Thomas since freshman year. So that was a huge hindrance on me to have the bus discontinued. I think that although there hasn't really been a notable decline in ACTC participation, I think that there needs to be, honestly, I think that we aren't taking enough advantage of that connection, and if we don't take advantage of that connection, it's going to go away, which would be really detrimental to students who are doing like a women's studies program where you have to take classes at St. Kate's, or a certain language minors where you have to take classes at other campuses. So I think that rather than like just only like catering to students who are currently ACTC students, we should be encouraging better relationships with the ACTC students or schools, and in that, like if we have a higher demand, that will help to bring better options. So things like potentially bringing back the bus. If there's a bigger demand, that's something that I think the administration would be more privy to.
Yeah, the dean's office does offer subsidies for ACTC, but maybe you mentioned that, for ACTC, for Metro Transit passes.
They're $170 still.
I know.
No, they offer a subsidy for it.
They're $100.
I don't know, yeah, I was gonna say that, I don't know if you mentioned that before. But my question is, how would you guys respond to, you know, there's a lot of like big events that happen around the world that affect, you know, so many Hamline students. I think that's something that we could tell exactly from this year. So like, how would you guys respond to like you know, a sensitive, you know, like maybe just taking from those events, like a sensitive like racial incident that happened in the Twin Cities that affects so many, you know, students. Like, what is, you know, your guys' like response as, you know, vice president and president?
I feel like that has affected me as a student too, being a Muslim student, and with the recent attacks in Paris, I've been a target coming to school, and I feel like we should address this as a community and making sure that when it's on us, making sure that students will speak up for each other, especially when I'm still traumatized and terrified of taking public transportation. I kind of want that like feeling that students are there for me, like my Hamlin family is there for me to support me. So in a way, like probably have more panels or having more discussions with students, talking about how they feel on campus, how they feel in the world as a citizen of this world. Do they feel safe, and how could Hamlin students make each other feel safe? Because I know I'm never safe outside of Hamlin, and I'm safe at home, but when I leave my house coming to here, I'm not safe.
Yeah, I think a big aspect of that is visibility. So having people of color like in HUSC, and also giving, if there aren't, giving space for, I'm specifically thinking of like Black Lives Matter and what happened with Jamar Clark. And if there aren't, then giving space for those people to bring their concerns to HUSC and tell HUSC, like, well, this is what we need, this is how you can be an ally to us. So there's an aspect of both visibility and also allyship and how those two things work together. I definitely think that there needs to be a lot more talk on allyship.
You know, this once again gets back to the point about facilitating discussion and making safe spaces for students to share what's on their mind. And, you know, when major events go on in the world, I think it is important to talk about them, and it is part of HUSC's job to talk about them. And we had some pretty decent targeted GAs, you know, put on by you guys, who that addressed issues, and it like brought in administration for their input, and it allowed students to talk about what was on their minds while giving administration an input on what they can do to help.
I think this builds off of, you guys had a great point, panels. The panels this year were super successful. I would love to see that encouraged. I would love to see more of those. I think now that we know it was successful and that we can foster those kind of conversations with administration, with faculty, with students all together, I think that was just a step, and I think we can build off of that as well.
Thank you. More questions?
So you're talking, you're talking a lot about like meeting with students one-on-one and talking with them to get their perspective and what they can do. Then how are you going to take that information and move one step forward? Like how are you going to like be an advocate for that student? Take on question is, what advocacy work have you done in the past and how has it been successful? Does that make sense? Did I talk too much? Sorry.
You're wanting specific examples
If
of
you have
advocacy work? Yes.
Yeah. That would be great.
So I worked for Lutheran Social Services. So I was a case aid intern. So I did advocacy work. I advocated for people who had, in their first 90 days in the U.S., who couldn't speak English. I advocated them to for them to get an apartment. So working with landlords, I advocated for them in doctor's appointments so that they were getting the care that they needed. I also mentioned that I worked with Free Arts. So I was a mandatory reporter in Free Arts at a domestic abuse shelter. So I was working with children through like doing art therapy, and I was a mandatory reporter in that position. So advocacy, like things came up in that as well.
I am currently working for Southern Poverty Law Center. Here in Minnesota, the last few years ago, we had an anti-bullying law that was passed. And what we did with SPLC is we advocated for anti-bullying and tolerance in schools, making sure that students feel safe, teaching young students at a younger age to be more accepting, because I feel like if you start from the bottom and teach younger students about tolerance at a younger age, they grow up to be more accepting adults in the working world and as college students. Also, I've advocated for caucus training for immigrant families with the campaign that I'm currently working on, making sure that people who are underrepresented know what caucusing is, and tomorrow I'll be leading the MPERG caucus training for the DFL party, so come through tomorrow.
So I haven't had much experience in advocacy. As a child who grew up in like a rural community, and it was a small town, and we didn't have very many resources as such, but I think here at Hamline, just working through HUSC, I've had the chance to work with students on campus who have spoken out their needs, especially from the music department, and they came to us and we heard them and we worked on it, and we were able to grant them exactly what they needed. So being there for them, for a department that really needs it, was really successful.
Yeah, as far as advocacy in like an academic HUSC standpoint or angle, I like to think I'm a pretty sociable guy. I'm fairly outgoing, and I like to talk to people, and I also don't feel like a dweeb for talking about HUSC to people. So as far as like the individual connections, you can ask my friends. I ask what they want from HUSC all the time. And you know, a lot of people that I talk to aren't going to be comfortable speaking at GAs for, you know, maybe it's an issue with GA, or maybe it's just the person themselves don't like talking in front of other people. And so if they're willing to, you know, relate their wants and needs to me, I'm very happy to bring up those wants and needs in GA.
Yeah, sorry for asking so many questions, but for you guys, so I don't know if you know, but myself and Eric had no HUSC experience until we ran for President and Vice-President. And we definitely had faced a lot of challenges, but people with experience helped us out a lot. So how will you, take those, how will you face those challenges without that experience? And then how will you guys use that as an advantage? So kind of that kind of question.
Logan, do you want to go first?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess just from an experience standpoint, I know the systems. You know, I know the powers that be in HUSC and like how the systems operate, what orgs need to do to be the most efficient dealing with HUSC, what executive board members need to do in order to be the most efficient, and then like what reps need to do. And I guess the best place I could put my experience to use is being a resource for the people who are inevitably going to be on HUSC that haven't had any experience, because there's going to be a lot of new people, and those people are going to need the extra teaching and stuff that we can give them.
So I think it's important to point out perspective. So yeah, we do have really great experience and stuff in HUSC. I think it's also a thing where I'm ready to search out different perspectives outside of HUSC. So I might be hindered a little bit because I've been a part of HUSC. I'm ready to step outside of those bounds and to see what people have to say. I'm ready to change things. I'm ready to work on things, but within the limits and like make it successful.
With me and Kayla, I feel like we are not afraid to ask questions. We're going to reach out if we need help. I feel like that's a faster way for us into learning the ropes of being HUSC Vice President and President. Also, I feel like we are quick learners and very understanding, and I feel like we put in a fresh perspective. Not being part of HUSC, having more experience outside of HUSC with student organizations and MPERG and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think to add on to what Farhia is saying, although we haven't been involved in HUSC, we're very comfortable in leadership positions. So we don't have this specific experience, but we are still leaders, and I think that will help us to like catch on quickly and like learn quickly. Yeah, and I just kind of want to echo what Farhia said, is that like I know I'm not afraid to ask for help. Like if I'm feeling overwhelmed and I know somebody who has the answer, it wouldn't make sense to not ask them.
Sarah?
Presidents and vice presidents will come in with
Or HUSC as an organization as a whole can help be a mediator for like intergroup conflict. Is that kind of what you're getting at? Or
Yes.
Okay, so like so I mean like the SOC chair has a lot of power in like contacts and dealing with things like that. So really emphasizing to the student org chair that they are there for student orgs and that's what they're there for is one of the better ways that we can solve issues amongst orgs and getting them on the right path to non-issues.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Being there with a team who has leadership over organizations and such, I would definitely fall back on my team. So we have an exec board. Logan's my campaign partner. I definitely think it's important to not put the stress on like one person or try to solve all your problems alone. So I would consult with others. I would get both sides. I would have outside input. I would work to resolve the situation.
Can you clarify, by groups, do you mean student groups or identity groups?
student groups particularly.
Okay, yeah, I kind of want to echo then what Logan was saying about communication and mediation. So having a space for both sides to kind of voice where they're at and kind of reach a compromise. I think like compromising is going to be like, I don't think we should just like fall back on like, oh, this is what HUSC wants, so this is what we should do. If there's a student group who's in contention with what HUSC believes, then we have an obligation to sit down with them and have effective communication and mediate the issue and come up with a compromise.
Also, let's not forget who votes for presidents and vice presidents and representatives. It's the students. So if they have a problem, it is our job to sit down and communicate and probably find a compromise and, you know, meet them halfway and see what we can do as vice president, president, and as HUSC.
No.
Back corner.
Chad.
We have an order going on.
I have a really good one. I have a really good
I see you asked like 4 questions.
I don't know. If you could model yourself after any president candidate, who would you pick?
Like in all time?
No, this year.
Oh,
Hey.
real person running for president?
Oh.
Who's running for president now of the United States? Moving
No,
on.
no, I'm sorry.
Ooh. Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders.
Well, I mean,
To the burn.
I also want to state that presidents and vice presidents are not.
We're not
Yes.
currently president and vice president though, so.
Yes, and just remember that your president and vice president will not campaign and tell you how to vote. So
You guys-
they have personal opinions, but you don't have to follow those if you elect them. So. All right, we're moving on to the next question.
Okay, I have a question specifically for Kayla. Sorry, Logan.
Literally just me? Like not even Parker?
I mean,
Your team.
definitely weigh in. Yes, your
Okay,
team. You're
okay.
president, so it's all on you, really. A moment ago, you said that the views of the student population should take precedent over your particular opinions. How do you reconcile that with your opinion that the GPA standard for president and vice president should be lowered or eliminated when that was voted on by the student body less than 3 years ago?
Well, I don't remember ever being a part of that vote since I was a student at this school. So I don't think that it's fair to say that the entire student body voted on that, because especially if that vote was taken in a general assembly, I don't think the whole student body was there.
Point of clarification, it would not be voted upon in General Assembly. It would have been voted upon on the same ticket that you guys would be running on.
In other words, it was a presidential election.
There are records that it was.
Okay, yes, so I think that that's a valid question. I've also talked to a lot of people since this has been an issue, and literally every single person that I've talked to about it has said that that's problematic, that's specifically ableist, that's holding back people from being leaders. So in having those conversations now, I don't think that the view is necessarily the same as it was 3 years ago. That may seem like a short time frame, but every single person that I've discussed it with, which is a lot of people considering I had to get 100 signatures since I had to do the 50 signatures twice, has said that that's not something they believe in.
Also, with GPA requirements, I feel like that's a disadvantage. Kind of like to echo what Kayla said, I feel like we should look at a person as a whole, not just the GPA. That's a disadvantage for students who have needs, students who just can't get up to that level. So I feel like if you look at a person as a whole, not just the number, we can see more of its capability.
And I don't think that that's a radical view of mine alone. I think that looking at a person as an entire human being and factoring in their entire identity is not just my own radical view.
I think Melissa had a question previously.
Yeah, mine was, can you name a time specifically when you've made a change in a complex system? Not just like advocated for something, but really made a change?
Logan?
Oh, this is one of those thinkers. Okay. Yeah, I guess the biggest change that comes to my mind, this is kind of a lame example of it, is how my high school newspaper was run. And that's obviously not a very complex system, and it's more that has less to do with my qualifications to overthrow the system and have a punk rock ethos, and more to do with my aspirations of leadership in high school. But yeah, my paper was run very differently in high school, and I didn't like it, and so I actually ended up taking a class block to help improve the paper and make it a little bit more for the students, and I guess that was my best example for that one.
I mean, yeah, if we want to shoot back to high school here, I was a yearbook editor in high school, and that was like a big deal for our small town because everyone likes to reminisce. So having that time, I actually had work study at my high school. I took all that time to actually change the entire format and sassing and editing and everything about the group. So it was a big change, and like I just put my heart and soul into it and like all my time, and like I saw results, and that was really cool and successful, and I want to keep doing that with other things as well.
So I kind of started talking about this and didn't get to finish earlier. So I am a member of, I'm on the board of directors for MPER's statewide organization, and I'm on the policy committee with them. So this year we have constructed a sexual assault policy for the organization of MPER. So that would extend across 7 different campuses, or 7 different chapters of those campuses. As well as the board. So we have come up with an informed affirmative consent policy as well as a no tolerance policy. So although that is just within that organization, I feel like that's a very deep and important structural change that I had a big part in.
Recently, I've gotten involved with the political world. So what I've been doing as a person who is an immigrant, I reached out to people who speaks English as their second language, and taught them caucus training, because you can't really make the issue until you take it to politics and make sure that politicians are addressing those issues like police reform and stuff like that. So I managed to, after my training, to have a Somali/English caucus training in Cedar, and where Somali elders learned how to caucus and be part of the system without them being overlooked. So I feel like I made a huge change, because a lot of minorities are not part of the caucus process, and making sure that everyone's voices are heard. I made sure that I reached out to the Somali community and held this English/Somali caucus training, and making sure that they were involved in March for Minnesota caucus. So I think that's pretty cool.
More questions?
Going back to the GPA thing, how will you make sure that the people you appoint to exec boards are leaders and role models for the rest of the students at Hamline as far as academics are involved?
As a point of clarification, can I please state that the Constitution, just so everybody is clear, the GPA requirement for President and Vice President is a 3.0. That was changed in 2013 by a vote of 388 students voted out of 547 to increase the GPA requirement. No other exec board positions or representative positions require a GPA requirement, just so everyone's on the same page.
So are you still asking your question then, since there isn't a GPA requirement for the exec board positions?
I guess not, but how will you make sure that your exec boards are role models to Hamline, I guess?
I think that there's more than one way to be a role model. I think that being intelligent and being successful in the classroom is not the only way to be a role model. So I guess speaking specifically, my former running mate is, I believe, a huge role model to me, and somebody that I look up to, and he didn't have a qualifying GPA, so he couldn't be sitting here tonight. And I think that that's not fair, and I think with exec positions, there is an interview process, so I guess asking them specifically what they think makes them a role model and a leader would be a way to kind of see that. And then I guess people who I think are role models and leaders are I don't know, I think they're visible on campus. You know when someone is a leader, so. Are you asking?
Was it specific to that or?
No, you can.
Okay.
Well, personally, Yes, there are interviews as well, and I think there I would hold high standards for academics, all around personality, and like leadership roles. So being able to effectively communicate and mediate conversation. So being able to step aside and not have like a personal opinion affect things. So just overall, being a genuinely good person, academically, personally, in your social light, I think is really important.
I mean, I think a lot of the reasoning for the 3.0 GPA requirement comes from the idea that you're a student first, and you know, I definitely agree with that sentiment, and I also agree that, you know, grades are not directly indicative of your you know, your worth as a person in any means, and grades are more of a, you know, indicator of your maybe your drive to work in classroom settings or academics. But as far as holding people accountable, I mean, you know, you need to realize that people are students first, and that, you know, sometimes it's okay to focus on your schoolwork ahead of HUSC, and I understand that. And then, you know, as long as you get your HUSC stuff done and you kind of find the perfect balance, and helping my executive board to find the balance, I think leads them to being the best role models from an academic standpoint.
Can I say something? Can I just say
Sure.
Okay.
We can do rebuttals if you guys, if Logan's team wants to respond after that. We can.
All right, to go off of what Logan said, I feel like GPA is somewhat of a factor of someone's, but like I agree with you're a student first, but still there's things that can happen in a person's life where they can't uphold 3.0 GPAs. They are humans too, they have lives, they have a family, something can happen in the middle of their school academic wise. So I feel like instead of just looking at GPA, I feel like we should look at the person as a whole, their personality and how they do, and what can they contribute to the Hamline community.
Yeah, I think to add the statement that GPA is indicative of drive, I disagree with. I know people who are very driven, but there are people who maybe they have mental illness that affects the way that they perform academically. Maybe they provide for themselves financially and they work 2 or 3 jobs, and that affects them being able to do homework. So I don't think that that is necessarily indicative of drive, more so than it's just an arbitrary number.
So I get a roll though, right?
Yes.
All right, so the whole 3.0 thing is kind of a complex issue, but the question was in regards to role models as athletics, and I don't think that your worth as a person is in any way, or academics, sorry. Yeah, no, it doesn't mess up. But no, I don't think that it has anything to do, I don't think your worth as a person has anything to do with the question at hand necessarily. I think it has more to do with like, the work that you do in HUSC is flat out just very similar to academia and academics, and it's like, I mean, there's a certain standard that you have to hold people to be in leadership positions when you're dealing with just an academic lens. I mean, I got some bad grades in high school, and I like to think I'm not a piece of crap, but, you know, was I qualified for the same roles that I'm qualified now back in high school? Definitely not. There's a lot of improvements I've made, and my GPA is part of the thing that shows that, and I'm proud of it.
All right, more questions? Sarah, is there a hand
I'm
up?
still on the same topic, and I'm sorry to like drag this out, but I have a hard time reconciling if you have different things going on in your life that are preventing you from being able to have a certain GPA. It concerns me in your abilities to be able to hold a position like a HUSC President, Vice-President that requires so much out of you throughout your entire life. Like, it's not just like a 9-to-5 job. Like, you're gonna have to respond to a lot of different things throughout your whole time as President and Vice President. How do you, I guess I don't even know how to phrase this as a question. I don't know how to, if you have problems going on that are preventing you from being able to do academic work, I guess it's how do you have time to do your HUSC work?
Do you want, is this directed to one candidate?
Anyone who wants to respond
Okay.
to that, I guess.
I mean, yeah.
I do work 3 jobs, and like I'm above a 3.0, and I like to multitask, and it's something I definitely enjoy is school and the organizations I'm a part of. I think it is important though to overall look at a person's personality and judge that. I think we could definitely work on the appeal process, interview process. It's something we can definitely look at, and we could possibly change in the future if need be, or if the student body would want that.
We're gonna go to the final question, so. Any really good questions? Yes.
What's your favorite superhero?
I don't know if this is a superhero, but the brave little toaster.
Yes.
That's a loaded question. I used to be a huge Marvel person. It's kind of like
What first one comes to mind?
Okay, first one that comes to mind. God, I can't remember.
Just do it. Rip the Band-Aid off for you.
Spider-Man? Yeah. Okay.
I firmly stick this, the Hulk. Yes, he is very aggressive, but no one can beat him. I'm gonna stick with him. Not true. I'm gonna say that. You can't pick up the hammer.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a really campy response here and say my dad. You see him flying around sometimes. He's a good guy.
Does he have a cape though?
No capes.
Spandex.
Tons of spandex.